Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. This is one of our series of Grow Your Success webinars and a series for to empower educators. And we welcome you all to our session today. We have with us, joining us, our guest presenter, Dr. Beth Bradley. And the title of our session today is Communication and Trust in the Educational Setting. We're honored to have Dr. Bradley with us today. She is the owner and senior consultant of E.J. Bradley and Associates and a Citrus Grow consultant. Beth has worked in education for over 30 years and as an assistant superintendent of schools for 22 of those years. She has conducted trainings for schools and corporations on professional behavior, leadership, effective supervision, team building, and trust building across New York State, Massachusetts, and Arizona. And creating safe and respectful cultures is the focus of her work. We're so honored to have you with us today, Beth. So thank you so much. I will be exiting the stage and then I'll come back at the end to say hello to everybody. As people are entering our session today, please put in the chat your name if you want, where you're from, what school or organization you work for. And again, welcome and thank you again, Dr. Bradley, for being with us today. So we'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
I'm very happy to be with you today and to talk about what I consider an extremely important topic, and that is communication and trust. And although today I'm going to be talking a great deal about examples from the educational setting, you are also going to see that this is very transferable to any other setting as well. So any other work setting, as well as this will be very applicable even in our personal lives. So we'll get started. If you have a chance and you could put something in the chat room about your school organization or your current role or where you are entering from, we would appreciate that. So I have two main objectives today. One is that you have an understanding of the benefits of high trust, and second, that you will explore 5 communication practices that increase trust. So my goal is to be very practical with information today and give you information that you could implement immediately. I want to start by asking, what's one word that you would use to describe trust? And if you could share that in the chat, I would appreciate it. So when you think of somebody you trust, is there a word that you would use? If you think of an organization that you trust, is there a word that you would use? If there is anything that you could enter about that, I would appreciate it. So reputable, steadying, fair, loyal, honest. Absolutely. Okay. All very good words about trust. And here's some more. So one of the definitions of trust is that we have confidence in this person or this thing. We can rely on it. We know there's integrity, veracity, justice, friendship, or some other sound principle of another person or thing. 4 of the characteristics that we often think of with trust is respect, openness, honesty, and reliability. And here's something that I'm going to be talking about quite a bit. Trust makes our lives easier. We are currently faced with so many challenges, both in our work life and our personal lives, that when we have trust, we are able to implement things quicker in terms of solutions, and it absolutely makes our lives easier. I want to talk about the 4 behaviors a little bit more. So in terms of honesty, and a number of you mentioned that, that's truthfulness and integrity in all our words and action, and that's probably the core of trust. But reliability moves us to act, doing what you say you're going to do with competence and skill. We're going to talk a lot about competence and character when it comes to trust. And then respect. Respect centers on the belief that the other person is unique and honorable, whatever their rank or role, and requires that we treat others fairly. So important right now. And then openness, and that's based on one's willingness to openly share information, feelings, ideas, and expectations with others. I want you to think for a minute if you've ever been in a high trust team or a high trust group. What kinds of things do we see in a high trust organization? I'm going to move ahead a little bit and talk about some of the things that we have seen in high trust organizations, but also when there's low trust. So one of the things that we see in a high trust group is in a high trust culture is open door policy. Decisions are made behind closed doors when there's low trust. I've heard people say, yeah, shared decision making. They made the decision and I guess they're going to share it with us sometime. So when there is high trust, people are involved, there's an open door policy, there's transparency. One of the other things we see is when there's high trust in a culture, there's good attendance. Low trust, we see high absenteeism. In high trust, there's going to be change. And let's just talk about that for a second. One thing we know for sure is that there's going to be change. And we're going to have to learn to adapt to change. When there's high trust, change can be adapted easily. There's more buy-in from everybody. When there's low trust, there's a real reluctance to change and sometimes even sabotage to change. High trust, there's good morale. Low trust, infighting, poor morale. Open communication and high trust, a lot of gossip. The meeting after the meeting. You think that things have been set, and then all of a sudden you see a little group who's meeting, sometimes even out in the parking lot, making a decision about what they're going to not do or how they want to change things. When you're in a high trust group, there's open communication, sharing of information and materials. Low trust, there's hoarding of materials. They're afraid to share anything because they're afraid they won't get it back or they won't get anything else back. A willingness to try new things when there's high trust, which is so important. Fear of failure in low trust. Probably that saying that you sometimes hear people say, we'll wait for the next change that's coming because this is just something that's going to, last for a short while until the new person comes in and changes everything. And then in a high trust organization, people rapidly report safety concerns. And that's something that's so critical to us right now. In a low trust organization, people are hesitant to report things. They don't know if it'll be handled with any kind of confidence or competence, so they're less likely to report quickly. I want to give you now 5 practical strategies in communication that I believe can really help us build trust. We're going to talk about active listening, focusing on what we can control, assuming good intent, and respectful feedback and appreciation, as well as loyalty to the absent. So these communication strategies, starting with active listening. This quote from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits: seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I need to tell you, whenever I truly take the time to focus on this and seek first to understand in a conversation before I'm trying to be understood, it works. It's something, though, that we all really have to work on. Because one of the things that we find is these problems, right? We let our attention wander. We miss the real point. We let our emotions interfere. We step on the statements of our colleague or our friend or our family member. We think ahead and then we miss what's being said right now. Those are all common listening problems that all of us can struggle with, but if we really focus, it can make a difference. So some of the active listening body language is eye contact, alert expression, head nodding, a forward lean to the body, phrases like, yes, go on, that really signal our attention. clarification, asking questions, summarizing what's been said. Yeah. Paraphrase the message in your own words. Yeah. One of the, something in the chat that just came up. Yeah. Sometimes I think about how I'm going to respond, rather than really listening to what's being said. One of the techniques that I've learned is to even do an imaginary talking stick, which is, from the Native American culture of you have a talking stick and you say what it is that you need to say. And the other person doesn't get to speak until they get that talking stick. And that talking stick gets to them when the person believes they're truly understood. And so to just kind of picture that in your head when you're speaking with someone before you try to make your point is really very important and powerful if we are actively listening. I need to take a minute to talk about cell phones because certainly those of us in education have seen what has happened with cell phones and the lack of attention and ability to really focus. But I can see where it's really hurt communication in so many ways. But I also have seen in meetings when there was a break in a meeting before, or people were entering a meeting, or there was a little bit of downtime, when they used to turn to each other and have a conversation about what was happening, what they were going to do on the weekend, how their family was, if they got a new pet, those kinds of things that really build relationships. Those kinds of conversations, they aren't happening nearly as frequently because as soon as there's a break, people are looking at their phone. So we've seen a real difference in this. We've seen a difference in our kids too, in terms of their ability to really listen and be present and have a very good conversation with somebody. I mean, there are some kids who are, texting their parents from their bedrooms. So one of the things I've learned for sure, and that's this: you can't do two things at once if one of them is listening. And I prided myself on being such a good multitasker. I could for sure do at least two things at once, but you can't do two things at once if one of them is listening. So when we implemented this strategy and said, you know what, we're going to work on this in terms of my work group, one of the things that we did is say, we're going to hold ourselves accountable. We're really going to try to actively listen. There's times when it's not necessary, but when it's necessary, we want to make sure we're doing this. And I had a colleague who worked in the business office, and one of the parts of his job, I think, was to sign, and I'm pretty sure it was purchase orders. So what he would do is say, hey, yeah, Beth, go ahead. Just talk. I'm good. And keep right on signing and look down and sign. Okay. What I was able to do after we made this agreement and had some training was say, I need you to actively listen to me on this. And then he knew, okay, put down the pen. We're going to actually make eye contact, and you're going to use your skills so that we can have this conversation and deal with whatever the issue is that needed that active listening. Very important. I want you to really think about doing that more. It's something that we can do in our personal lives better. I know that, and I need to work on that as well as certainly in our professional lives and our work lives. The second strategy I want to talk about is focus on what we can influence and control. This concept, I think, is also something that is really powerful and can really redirect our energy. One of the things I'm very aware of now, even more so than before, is we only have so much energy, and we need to think about where we are putting that energy. So in this diagram, you see a circle of concern, and those are things that are concerns, but we don't have any control over them. And in the middle, you see the circle of influence. And the circle of influence are things that we can influence and control. We need to spend our time on things that are in the circle of influence. And then that circle gets larger and larger. when I was an assistant superintendent, I put a practice in place where when we monitored student achievement very carefully, and early on, if we saw that there was a high failure rate in a class, we would immediately meet with the teacher, have a conversation, and figure out what we could do for support in order to turn things around quickly. Those conversations often started with the staff members saying, you know, I know that there's a problem, but it's the parents. Those parents just, they don't care. They can't follow up with the kids. It's just, and you know what? The board didn't give us what we really needed. And you know what else? I think that the schedule just isn't working for me. These kids are having first period and they're tired, and we need to start the school year probably, school day a little later. Okay, where are all of this conversation going? It's all in the circle of concern, certainly not in anything that we're going to be able to do something about. So the challenge for me always was to figure out a way to redirect that into circle of influence, circle of control. So we would then start talking about what are some strategies that you might try that would help these kids be more successful? What kind of support can I give you in terms of some training in some strategies? There's a teacher who has the same schedule, is teaching the same subject, getting great results. Let's talk about sharing those lesson plans. Can you meet with that teacher and talk with them, see what kinds of things they're doing to get these kinds of good results? So we're always looking at things we can control and influence. And this is the same for any issue that comes up. I like this perspective on trust because, again, this is about communication, building relationships, and building trust. When you focus on things you can influence and control, for example, your relationship with others, your own character and competence, you send out ripples of influence and build trust from the inside out. When you focus on things you can't control, you're going to have less time and energy to spend on things you can influence. I've worked with groups where we ended up putting that symbol, and let me go back to it, putting that up actually on the meeting room wall so that we can remind ourselves when that conversation starts spinning in that circle of concern, because we know that that's really kind of a waste of time and energy. One of the things I also did at one point was have a little 2-minute hourglass that I had on my desk. And sometimes people just need to get out their concerns, even though there's nothing that can be done about it. And we're okay with that. We're going to spend 2 minutes getting those concerns out. They could be legitimate, but there's nothing that we can do about those. Let's talk about the things that we can control and what we can do to take action. The third strategy I want to talk to you about is assume good intent. And in assume good intent, I am talking about when we are dealing with our colleagues and our team members, also friends and family as well. So what happens with each of us is that we see or hear something, we quickly tell ourselves a story in our head. It affects how we feel, it affects how we act. Okay? I'm going to give an example of this. So my husband and I are in the car, he's driving, and a car speeds by us, kind of cuts in, moves up, speeds by the next car, cuts in, moves up. Okay? I can tell from his reaction, which is quite different than my reaction, that we've told ourselves a different story about what happened. So what my husband is thinking immediately is, this guy's irresponsible. He just thinks he needs to get ahead of everybody. It isn't right that he's doing this. My story I told myself was, I wonder why he's in such a rush. Maybe he just got a call from a family member that they're in the hospital and he's trying to get there. Maybe his wife's having a baby. I mean, there's lots of reasons which makes us feel very differently about what we just saw, same thing, and then how we act, right? So how we feel and then how we act. What I am recommending to you in terms of good communication and trust building is that when you have a colleague who says something or does something that could be taken in a couple of ways, I want you to assume good intent and try to really master that little story that you have in your head. This is a picture that I asked my daughter to take, who's a teacher and department chair in a high school. And I said, Bridget, I want you to take a picture of one of your administrators. This is her assistant principal, Kim, walking by you in the hall, but not making eye contact. Because occasionally that can happen, right? With someone, especially if it's somebody who's a leader in a leadership position, authority position. So they staged this, which by the way, was not easy for Kim because she would not do that normally. And it was hard for her to do this. In fact, they made actually a cute little video that we were unable to insert technically. But what I'm showing you here is when that happens to somebody, they tell themselves a quick story. So the story she could tell ourselves when the assistant principal has just walked by and not made eye contact is maybe, oh my gosh, I wonder if something's going on. We just had a meeting about our department and about some cutbacks maybe, or I wonder what, right? So now where is her energy going? So then she sees another person in her department and she starts talking to them about, I just saw Kim and she just walked by and didn't say anything. And then, okay, and then it starts spinning. And where is the energy going for a while? It's not going in a place that's allowing us to do our very best work. So assuming good intent would mean if that does happen with a member of your staff and a team member, assume good intent. Assume that, wow, be a little curious. Okay, I wonder what's going on. Maybe there's something really important happening and she needs to get there. I know they're dealing with a lot, and we know school administrators are dealing with a lot. So assume good intent. I want to talk to you about gossip. Gossip is the number one reason for poor morale in any organization. And that, again, it goes to that, not assuming good intent. Okay? We need to make that a rule in our organization, and then we can call each other on it. When we come to an agreement on that, and we catch ourselves, then we can call each other on it and say, okay, really, this isn't what we should be doing. I want to talk about the fourth strategy, which is feedback. And this is about giving respectful feedback. We give respectful feedback often to appreciate the work somebody has done, coach to improve performance, or to evaluate. But one of the things that I want you to take a look at is the language and tone. And we're doing so much now with emails, texts, voicemails, in many places still with masks on. We need to be really careful about that because that can be so easily misinterpreted. I'm actually okay with people doing emojis in their text at work, just to make sure that we're making sure that the tone is correct and it's not going to be misinterpreted. Anything we can do to make sure that we're always being respectful, even when we need to be a bit critical about an issue, always with respect. Another thing that I've found that's really can work once we develop a relationship with someone is to ask for some balanced feedback. And one of the ways we can do that is to tell them ahead of time that you really want to ask for some feedback, and either to improve your performance or even to improve the relationship, and ask, is there something that if I stop doing it, it would improve my performance? Are there things that if I keep doing them, it will it's improving my performance and it's something that you think is really working well. And there's something, if I start doing it, would improve my performance or the relationship. I think once you become comfortable with somebody, and you might want to just try this with somebody who you already have a good relationship with and see how it works. But if you're looking for balanced feedback, this SKS technique, I think, can work really well. And also showing appreciation. I think this is absolutely true. The deepest principle of human nature is the craving to be appreciated. Anytime you can show appreciation to somebody, it makes a very big difference. It makes such a difference in the relationship. And it's also a way to build trust. So sincere, very sincere appreciation. One of the things I learned that I need to do is to do more of that. So I would actually put it in my calendar that I needed to make sure that I was going to show appreciation and send notes to at least 3 people that week. And that was very important. So anytime you get a chance to do that. And I need to tell you, one of the things I'm noticing more is the use of the word appreciate. I am hearing that now more and more about people saying that to each other. The gratitude messages, absolutely. So I'm hearing I'm grateful way more these last few years, and I appreciate you. I hear that. And anytime you can be specific about it, it makes it even more powerful. The last strategy I want to talk to you about is loyalty to the absent. And I want to first just take a little sidestep here, because one of the things I've worked on a great deal in my career has to do with school safety. And we are really at a time, and I'm coming from just outside of Buffalo, New York, and we recently had the horrific mass shooting, racially motivated, and we shortly, not even 2 weeks later, we've had another horrible school shooting in Texas. So when I talk to you about assuming good intent and soon about being loyal to the absent, I want you to know that I train people, and I feel so strongly that we must report anytime quickly to the right people anything that has to do with harassment, bullying, hazing, anything that's dangerous, any kind of discrimination, and any dangerous activity. Absolutely, that gets reported. But here's something that I've learned about, because at one time I said to Suzanne right after the incident happened in Buffalo, I know I'm working on this, Suzanne, but I'm almost wondering, what's really important? How are we spending our time? And then I had to sit back and really think about it. And what became clear to me is when there is high trust, things happen quickly. Not only can some things be prevented, but the response happens so much more quickly when there is a problem. So strong communication, strong relationships, and having high trust is really a way to help us move forward. I want to talk about loyalty to the absent. So in loyalty to the absent, the original loyalty to the absent rule was we'll never talk negatively about anybody who is not in the room right with us. And I thought that is really difficult. It's good, but it's very difficult. So what I've modified it to be is we're never going to talk and complain about somebody who's not there unless we're discussing a strategy about how we're going to address this person about that concern in the very near future. Okay? One of the things that happens in any organization is we will have, and I have to tell you, I fell into it. My first year of teaching, I remember there was a group of us who would get together on Friday after the school was out and get together socially. And the main topic of conversation was complaining about the building principal. I'm sure that has happened in other places. And that was what we did. And there's something about that that's kind of short-term, kind of pleasant, and long-term, absolutely damaging. Absolutely damaging. So we need to really think about that, because it's easy to fall into. I also fell into it one other time when I worked with a team member who really I did not agree with on many, many issues. Very different leadership styles, very different ways of looking at the world. But we both had a supervisor at the time who was extremely difficult, who had like a very different personality publicly than behind closed doors, had temper tantrums at times. And one of the things that happened is one of the only times I was able to talk with this team member was when we were complaining about this other person. Once again, almost short-term comfortable, long-term seriously damaging. And I needed to recognize that, and take a look at what I believed and what was really operating from a place of high character and ethics. And I needed to find a way to address this concern with that person about their behavior, as opposed to just talking about it negatively with the other. So I've referenced a lot in this half hour, I know. Here are 4 books that I do recommend. The 7 Habits really holds up. His son, Stephen, did The Speed of Trust, as well as I really like Crucial Conversations and The Respect Effect. The Respect Effect is about the neurological leadership aspect of having respect. So quick recap, we talked about active listening, focusing on what we can control, assuming good intent, giving respectful feedback, and loyalty to the absent. I really like this quote: trust is not some soft, elusive quality that you either have it or you don't. Rather, trust is pragmatic, tangible, actionable asset that you can create. I believe, based on my research and my experience, that adopting these communication practices can really help you create a more trusting culture. I'm happy to take any questions or comments. And I'm also including my email in there as well, so that if you have questions or want to have a discussion later, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Beth. We really, really appreciate you being with us. As she said, we'll take questions. If you'd like to put them in the chat, feel free. We'll stay on for a few more minutes. I just want to say that I've known Dr. Bradley for probably about 10 to 12 years now. And as you can tell, Beth is highly passionate about character and ethics, and it's so evident in everything you say. And I never tire of listening to you. So thank you. I'm sure everyone else has really enjoyed this as well. This has been great. I see a couple comments. Great presentation, Dr. Bradley. Very informative. Thank you. So many things I've not really thought much about before. Thank you for your investment in our hearts this afternoon. Thank you so much for your comments. So just one other thing, as you have Beth's information there, you can always reach out to us at Citrus. We have a couple, couple emails here. Myself, I'm the Chief Program Director, as well as Nichelle Ahmadiyya, who is our Chief Operating Officer. So you can reach out to us anytime. Beth is actually one of our Citrus Grow consultants, and she's also been an ambassador for the Character Council of Western New York for over a decade. So thank you, Beth, for your service to our community and for this great presentation today. If anyone would like to know more about Citrus services, including, bringing Dr. Beth Bradley to your school, we're more than happy to answer any questions you have or talk to you more about that. We do have our GROW model, which is a continuous improvement process, and it brings in professional development such as this to your schools. So thank you again. There is a question here. In a school setting, is there a better time of day when to have trusting conversations with a colleague? It's a great question. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, Brendan. It is a really difficult time for all of us to find time for these conversations. And so it's different and I think in every situation. But you're absolutely right, Brendan. We need to make sure that there is a time. So it could be before school, it could be after school, it could be at lunch, but when you actually have some time. And one of the things I learned to do is when I knew that there needed to be active listening on my part and that we were having a crucial conversation, and something else was happening that I could not change in terms of the schedule, I would say to the person, I really need to spend some time talking with you on this. And I want to devote that kind of time. Let's schedule a time. What works for you? When can we do that? So that they know that because rushing, you think, yeah, I can get this done quick. And it's going to resurface and resurface and resurface as an issue if we don't take the time to really handle it and take the time to truly listen and come to some kind of agreement. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it's so important, the timing and making the time. And if it's something that's really important, to schedule a time. And I think people really appreciate that so much, that you don't want to rush it. You don't want to do this in 30 seconds, and you want to really be attentive, which, by the way, is a great character quality. Attentiveness goes to what you were saying about you can't do two things at once if one of them is listening. So I just love that. That's so insightful. All right. I don't think there's any other questions here, so we will end our session, and appreciate everyone's attention and for being here this afternoon. Please have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful, safe, long weekend. And Beth, again, thank you so much for being our guest today for our webinar series.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's been a pleasure. Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Take care, everyone.